We do a lot of different consultations for churches. I've kind of been surprised at the number of churches over the years that we've done for personnel and pay evaluation of people within the church to find out, are they giving them a fair compensation package, salary, benefits, reimbursed expenses, etc. We're going to focus something on singularly at this time. In this particular podcast, we're going to focus on is what will be the typical raise for a pastor in 2023. Now, I realize the year is already more than half over. So we're talking about what we've seen thus far and what we've heard is going to be offered as a typical raise for a pastor. So we'll be looking at that singular issue because of these brief bursts of podcasts that we have called the Church Answers Podcast, always sponsored by Belay Solutions, always sponsored by Belay, who have been our founding sponsor, and they have been with us ever since we have started this podcast to today. We thank them, and we thank them for their ministry, for their providing such incredible virtual workers for churches, Christian organizations, other organizations. Check them out at belaysolutions.com and check out their download of 25 tasks a pastor can delegate to an assistant. You can get that at belaysolutions.com/Thom Rainer, or you can click on it in the show notes. Okay, here's the question. What will the typical raise for a pastor be in 2023? I'm going to give you that number at the end, not to try to just make you hang on, but I need to give some prefatory information before I just throw a number out there. I will say this, the way we do these podcasts, we do 3 a week. They're very brief. And so one of the ways we prepare is I write the information for 9 podcasts at a time, which will give us 3 weeks of podcasts to record. And at the time I wrote this information, which wasn't that long ago, I was seeing a trend taking place in pastoral compensation, particularly what the raise would be. The first point I want to bring up is even since I prepared this information, and now a few weeks later that I'm actually recording it, things have shifted a bit. And what we are seeing is they are shifting downward in terms of raises, and they're shifting to no raises at all. What is going on there? We're seeing a lot of signs, quite frankly. And I realize that we're airing this in early August, and even with the way the economy has just been as unpredictable as it can be, and the way the Fed has made decisions about rates, is hard to know. It's hard to know, exactly what is going on. But I can say that I detect a move in churches where the amount of the raise and the percent increase of the raise has been decreasing. And quite frankly, I'm seeing a lot of churches say, we just got to put the brakes on this because we're seeing some signs. I recently saw, I'm not going to address giving in this podcast because we're focused singularly on raises, but I recently saw some data that does indicate that donors to religious, Christian, and nonprofit organizations are not giving like they were. And so we're seeing those signs. That is one of the reasons that we're not seeing the percent of raises that we thought we would maybe just a few weeks ago. Second thing I want to mention in this is prefatory remark. Bivocational pastors often get left out of raises. Bivocational pastors often aren't considered for increases in their income. That's sad. And the logic, the flawed logic behind this from many of the members is, well, a bivocational pastor by definition has another job. That pastor can get a raise or increase pay, work more hours within that other job. Well, that's unfair. Pastors should be paid in a way that respects them and provides for them. And even if it is bivocational pastors, there needs to be some type of consideration. Are we taking care of our pastor, even though we cannot pay that person full time or not? So one of the comments that I just simply want to make here is that bivocational pastors are seeing, many of them are seeing 0 raises. That bothers me, but that's the reality of what we see. For those who are getting raises, and this comes back to the original question, what will the typical raise for a pastor in 2023 be? First of all, we cannot know for certain. We don't have the information from all 350,000 churches in the United States alone. We don't know precisely, but we work with a lot of churches to at least get good anecdotal information. And if this would have been recorded 2 months earlier, I would say the number would be in the 3.3% to 3.5%. So the raises would have been as high, typical raise. And there's always exceptions. The typical raise would have been as high as 3.5%. What I'm seeing now, and again, this is being aired in early August 2023. I realize these podcasts last a long time and people listen or watch them for years. But what we are seeing now is the number is getting closer to 3%. So even in the weeks since we began preparing for this podcast, the number has gone down from 3.5 or 3.3% range to now 3%. And so that is part of the challenge that we're seeing because of the uncertainty of the economy and headed into a presidential election season that provides a lot of uncertainty as well. So getting back to the original question, if there is a typical raise, again, I'm not saying an average raise, I'm just saying a typical raise. If you were to do a dispersion with dots and those dots each represented the raise that a pastor would get, we would see probably more of them in the 3% range. However, that's not median, that's not average. That's just, there are going to be a number of pastors who are not going to get any raises. Why? One reason is churches are struggling financially. Many churches are. That is a reality. Another reason that I've already mentioned is the uncertainty of the economy, and some churches are more vulnerable to the economic trends than to others. And those pastors and probably staff will not be getting raises as well. Third, and maybe shamedly so, we're having more and more pastors who are going bivocational, and many of those out of financial necessity for the church, and they likely will not get raises either. So when it is all said and done, around 3% for those who do get raises, but we know that there's a large group who will not get raises at all. Now, let me just add this as a closing comment. Many churches think a package is a salary. Let me explain that. Let's say a church provides $60,000 as a package to a pastor. Of that $60,000, the pastor may only keep, I'm making this up, $45,000. In other words, that would be in the secular world a $45,000 salary. What happens to the other $15,000? It goes toward medical insurance, retirement, typically medical insurance and retirement. So when you hear in your church that our pastor has a package of, that is typically not the salary, that is salary and benefits. So when you give a raise, make sure you're giving a raise on the salary. And don't think your pastor is overpaid if you hear a large number, larger than you would expect it to be, because they're putting the total of everything the church pays, which is salary, which is health benefits, which is retirement, and maybe automobile reimbursement as well. There could be some expense reimbursements in there too. But the bottom line to all of this, we see for those who will get a raise, the typical raise will be around 3%. We'll keep you updated if we see any changes. That's the beauty of these short podcasts. We can give new information on a pretty current basis. Thank you again for joining us on the Church Answers podcast. Thank you for Belay for being our sponsor. Don't forget they have that download. You can look at it in the show notes. Click right on 25 tasks a pastor can delegate to an assistant. And keep coming back, because this week we got 2 more podcasts for you. We're going to talk about interim pastors, and we're going to talk about eliminating activities in a church. Those are the 3 that we have for this week. We'll see you, I hope, in the others. This is the Church Answers podcast. I'm Thom Rainer. Hey, folks, this is a PS to our podcast. We got some exciting stuff that we want to offer you absolutely for free. Sam, when you think about predictive factors in a church's growth, if you take out demographics, what are some things that come to mind? Just 2. I mean, don't give me a list of 10. Just 2 or 3 things that come to mind on predictive growth of a church.
Well, evangelism and whether the
Event.
church is doing it or not. And then
Bingo.
I and then I will add, is it an ongoing evangelism emphasis
Double
as well?
bingo. And maybe something about leadership and their commitment to that. So all of the above.
Evangelistic churches have evangelistic pastors. Is
It,
the staff, is the lead pastor doing the work themselves?
We have a free download for you, and it's actually a sheet that you can self-score. You answer 20 questions, anywhere from strongly disagree to strongly agree, and we come back and we predict what your growth rate is going to be for the next year in worship attendance. It's not a perfect tool, but it's a good tool. There's a link to that for the attendance predictor. Look in the show notes. You'll absolutely love it. That's cool. We'll see you soon.